Welcome to South South News. I'm Bill Miller. How prevalent is genocide in various parts of the world? What is one United Nations office doing to reduce and prevent genocide in many areas? My guest today is an expert in this area. My guest today is the Undersecretary General Adama Dieng of Senegal, who is the Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide. Mr. Dieng is a former board member of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, and he's a former registrar of the International Tribunal for Rwanda. He has also contributed to the establishment of several non-governmental organizations in Africa, served as the former Secretary General in the International Commission of Jurists. He's also served as the United Nations Independent Expert for Haiti, and he was a driving force behind the establishment of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. Undersecretary General Dieng, welcome to South South News.
Thank you for your invitation.
I appreciate you being with me today. Let's start off at the top and talk about your office. We've got some very important and some very tough issues to deal with as we go through the program, but let's talk about your office. What do you do as a special advisor of the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide? When was your office started? Why?
My office was established in 2004 as a result of the failures of the international community to prevent the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, Srebrenica in 1995. And the United Nations Secretary General, at the request of the Security Council, established this mandate, which entrusts the special advisor with the task of collecting information and to act as a kind of early warning, to sound the alarm whenever a situation may lead to the commission of genocide. And it is indeed in that regard that later on also the international community decided to agree upon the norm of responsibility to protect.
Now, in 1948, there were two really major events, probably many others too, but two in particular. One was the establishment of the Declaration of Human Rights that Eleanor Roosevelt was very prominent in getting through. That came a little later, but earlier that year, there was also the establishment of a genocide convention. A convention on genocide has a long title, but basically it was a convention on genocide. What was the significance of that, especially as we came out of World War II, where 60 million people had died, Europe lay in ruins, parts of Asia had been destroyed, you had 6 million Jews who were exterminated. What was the significance of that genocide convention?
Well, let me repeat the whole title because it is important.
Please do that.
We're talking about the United Nations Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And most of the time, of course, people tend to forget the dimension of prevention. And in 1948, precisely on the 9th of December, the international community adopted this convention one day before they adopted the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. It was a symbol. It was a symbol which we are going to commemorate on the 9th of December, the 65th anniversary of that adoption. 1944, Raphael Lemkin, a Polish lawyer, embarked upon the campaign for the adoption of a legal instrument. He is the one who coined the term genocide. As you did say, it was simply unacceptable to let the Nazi, led by Hitler, to commit this tragedy, the Holocaust of the Jewish people. I have visited Birkenau, Auschwitz. I visited the Memorial de la Shoah in Paris. And I can say that what happened to the Jewish people at that time should never, never again happen. And that is why in 4 years later, after Lemkin started his campaign, the world agreed to adopt that convention so that it be possible to prevent, but also to punish. And when it comes to punishment, one had to wait until the establishment of the Arusha Tribunal, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, to see for the first time the crime of genocide being tried in an international court. And I think it is extremely important also to note that the International Criminal Court, which was established in 2001, has also a jurisdiction to try the crime of genocide and other crimes. It is in the statute known as the Rome Treaty, where those atrocity crimes are listed. And therefore, we need to do every effort to ensure that the 144 states which have so far ratified the Genocide Convention, others join them so that we have a universal ratification of the Genocide Convention.
Exactly. Now, there are terms that we use. We hear a lot of references to ethnic cleansing, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. At times, for we who are lay people who don't deal with these terms every day, how do you distinguish the difference between those four? There is a difference among those four. Basically, just a brief definition of each of them so that we don't use them interchangeably in the future.
Well, let's say genocide, the intent to destroy a group because of its nationality, race, ethnic, or religion. And then when it comes to the crimes against humanity, we are talking about widespread systematic crime being committed. And then when we talk about war crime, we are talking about willful killing, torture, enslavement, etc., violation of humanitarian law, the Geneva Convention, which were adopted in 1949. And therefore, the most important aspect to keep in mind is that when it comes to genocide, we are talking about a group which is protected. National, racial, ethnic, or religious group. And that is what we have seen in Rwanda, where between 800,000 to 1 million people of a Tutsi origin were killed. And of course, there were also Hutu moderate who were killed. And then if you take Srebrenica, you had about 7,000 to 8,000 people who were killed because they were Muslim, because of their religion, in that case, because of their ethnic, in the Rwandan case.
Exactly. Now, you're the special advisor, the Secretary General on the prevention of genocide. There's a special advisor of the Secretary General on the responsibility to protect, what we call R2P. Give us a little background on R2P, this responsibility to protect. When was it adopted? Why was it adopted? And how do your two officer responsibilities interface? They don't overlap, as I understand it, but they're complementary to one another. But talk a little bit about R2P, if you would, please.
2005, September, the world leaders agreed here in New York to adopt this notion of responsibility to protect. Likewise, the Secretary General established it at the request of the Security Council, the Prevention and Genocide Special Advisor. The world leaders committed that they will no longer sit down and watch people at risk being killed. And they adopted this important outcome document summit, which contained two important paragraphs, 138 and 139, where you will retain three important aspects. That is what we call the three pillars. I mean, pillar one, which remind states about their primary responsibility to protect their population. Pillar two, which remind the international community of its duty to rescue and assist other states which are in need to protect their population. And pillar three, which is the pillar which enables the international community through the Security Council on a case-by-case to intervene militarily in view of protecting population who are at risk of atrocity crimes. Atrocity crimes meaning the crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. So this is the commitment which came out of that World Summit in 2005. and following which the Secretary General established it in 2009, the position of Special Advisor on the responsibility to protect, whose first incumbent was my good friend Ed Luck, and who has now been replaced recently, last July, by an eminent professor from Oxford University, Jennifer Welch, who is working under my overall guidance here in New York, although she is based in Oxford, because she's working like Ed on a $1 a year arrangement. But I think it shows clearly that the international community had decided in 2005 that what happened in Rwanda, in Srebrenica, should never again happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be still materialized, because we are still seeing many populations around the world who are at risk. This doesn't mean that R2P has not been working. If you take the case of Mali, R2P has been, I would say, successful in the sense that the Malian people did ask their neighboring countries, and here I'm talking about the ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community for West Africa, the West African countries, to come to rescue. And also they asked the international community at large to come to rescue them, and thanks to that, the French troops were deployed to Mali, and this enabled to prevent the escalation of the jihadist element to continue destabilizing Mali. And today, Mali has succeeded to have a new government in place. Elections are going on, the parliamentary election. And my office will also offer support to the Malian people by organizing a series of peace forums in Mali, by assisting also the newly elected members of the parliament in close cooperation with the Interparliamentary Union. And I think it is extremely important. And the same we are doing, also working closely with ECOWAS, but also with the African Union, because people tend to forget that the African Union is one of the is the first organization ever at the regional level to have in its constitutive act an important provision, which is Article 4H, which which define a principle for the African leaders to take action whenever a situation may lead to the commission of genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. And that means R2P is already incorporated in the Constitution of the African Union.
It certainly is. Now, as you look at this situation around the world, and we see, in fact, perhaps the best question, I see Syria as a major challenge for your office right now. How do you see this unfolding with the responsibility to protect and your office, the prevention of genocide? When we look at Syria, you've got the United Nations agencies on the ground, the World Food Program, UN High Commission for Refugees, you've got the UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, you've got a variety of other groups, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, different UN entities that are on the ground, but still the civil war rages. Now, on the positive side, the Organization for the Prevention, Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is in there, hopefully going to destroy those chemical weapons by 2014, I think is the latest date I saw. But how can we be more effective and help prevent or try to get the warring parties together, because ultimately they have to decide that they want peace. The world can play an important role, but what can we do to put more pressure on them, so to speak, or to provide assistance to them through conferences or whatever it might take to make sure that they reduce the conflict and don't have a genocide?
Well, I mean, the situation in Syria is one of the, I may say, most worrying situation we have been witnessing in recent years. And unfortunately, the international community, and to not name it, the Security Council, did not act in a timely and decisively manner regarding the situation in Syria. Already in March 2011, my office issued a statement in which we clearly said that crimes against humanity were being committed in Syria. And one had to wait until October this year, 2013, to see the Security Council adopting a presidential statement. I'm not even saying a resolution which would be binding. And anyway, as we said, it's better late than never. So at least things are moving, and hopefully the efforts of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon through his envoy Lakhdar Brahimi, and the efforts of both Secretary Kerry, Lavrov, hopefully will bear fruit. There will be talks in Switzerland, and it is our sincere hope also that all the parties will understand that time has come to bring an end to this tragedy. We are talking now about more than 100,000 people who have been killed. And I'm not referring to the millions of people displaced. And the issue of humanitarian assistance is becoming more and more acute. Soon we'll be entering, and almost we are entering the winter season in Syria, also in the neighboring countries. So we need to come to bring an end to this tragedy. We need to ensure that the people of Syria get back and reconcile with themselves. We need to make sure that tomorrow not a single minority will be vindicated by any of the parties, because the hatred is such that we need every effort to get the Syrian community leaders, the Syrian religious leaders, to make sure that the people understand that this tragedy has been there, but it is time to really make sure that the wounds be secured and then start a new life. It took a quarter of a century to rebuild Lebanon, and it may take half a century to rebuild Syria. The destruction of that country is something
truly a generation lost. It certainly is. Now, if our viewers would like more information on what we're talking about today, they can go to www.un.org/EN/prevent genocide /advisor, or they could probably just Google prevention of genocide, Office on the Prevention of Genocide, and go right to your link, I'm sure. One of the classics, in the saddest sense of the word, of genocide was what happened in Rwanda back in the 90s. And we're about to hit the 20th anniversary of that, and hopefully the world will not forget Rwanda. But when we think back to the horrific devastation, something like 800,000 to 1 million, primarily Tutsis, but also Hutus died during that ethnic conflict. If we look back on that, what could we have done differently? Had the Secretary General Boutros-Ghali, who tried mightily to get a small peacekeeping mission to go in there, but he was not supported by the majority or a large number of the countries, especially the bigger countries at the UN Security Council. But what could that have made a difference in helping to maybe not totally eliminate that horrific carnage, but at least reduced it from 1 million to 200,000 or something like that?
Well, as you may know, the United Nations was established to maintain peace and security around the world.
Right.
And the use of force is something which has to be called as an ultimate recourse. However, a recent example in the DRC, when the M23 went really to a stage which was totally unacceptable, the Security Council finally agreed that a brigade of intervention be deployed, and the countries within the region agreed also to send their troops. And this has helped to finally bring an end to the terror by the M23, and hopefully DRC President Kabila and Museveni will be hopefully under Museveni's, I would say, mediation, they will sign an agreement, and this will bring stability in the region. Maybe in the case of Rwanda, if UNAMIR at that time was given the authorization to counter the genocide, maybe one could have avoided this huge number of people who were killed in 100 days. We are talking about almost 100 million of Tutsis and also some Hutu moderate. 100 days, this was not people killed by the bomb Hiroshima. These were people killed mainly by machete, all type of barbaric way of killing. I mean, you will see a baby just born being thrown in a wall. I mean, such a barbaric, unhuman way. So we hope that this will never be repeated. And today, we are extremely concerned about the situation in Central African Republic. And we hope that action will be taken. And I'm glad that following the briefing of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, following briefing by Deputy Secretary General Jan Eliasson, the Security Council is moving towards a resolution to authorize the deployment of forces to help to bring order in Central African Republic. So that is what we expect from the international community whenever populations are at risk of being victim of such atrocities, that the international community take action in a timely and decisive manner.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a very important topic. Genocide is something we need to learn much more about. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, they can go to your website or just Google the prevention of genocide by the United Nations, and they'll come right into your office. But Adama Dieng, Undersecretary General, I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on South South News.